Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Fortra webinar, The Two Faces of SQL on IBM. Thanks for joining us. Today's webinar is 30 minutes long. You will get a link to the recorded webinar along with some follow-up collateral. My name is Chuck Lisinski. I am the Director of Technical Services here at Fortra for the IBM product line, and glad to meet you. Today, what we're going to do is talk about SQL and IBM as one of its superpowers. So while SQL and IBM can be a great help in terms of system operations, it can also hit your system pretty hard in terms of CPU and storage when it comes to JDBC and ODBC connections, as well as internal SQL requests. So today we're going to talk about monitoring those requests as well as exploiting SQL services, which has greatly expanded the possibilities for system administration using SQL. Today I'm joined by Alex Lazaro. Alex is located in Argentina. How are you doing today, Alex?
I'm doing great, Chuck. Thanks. I'm Alex from Argentina. I've been working with Fortra for the last couple of years, and I work on as a technical consultant, professional services with the PowerTech and Robot Alliance. So I will be trying to assist Chuck on this.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. And you've done quite a bit in terms of system performance analysis on
Yeah.
IBM. In fact, I think you did a common presentation.
Yes, I did. I did
Awesome.
a presentation. I was lucky enough to be joined by Randy Watson. And I before joining Fortra, I was a huge user of Performance Navigator. I did a lot of work with performance. So yeah,
Awesome.
that's fine. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, great. All right, let's talk about the agenda. Go for it.
Okay, so basically we're going to discuss the different remote database connections, how we can do real-time proactive monitoring with our tools, and what are the DB2 for I services, and then we will have some time for the Q&A.
Yeah. All right, we're going to start with remote database connections. So more and more nowadays, IBM is being used as a database server. And developers are out there creating some fantastic graphical interfaces to IBM, and they're using IBM as the background database server and connecting to the database using the toolkit that's available for IBM and using ODBC and JDBC type connections. So when we establish those JDBC type connections, you will see those represented in your work management as a job, QZDASOINIT or QZDASSINIT, SS being the secure JDBC and ODBC connection. Typically, you'll see those come into your system in the QUser work subsystem. However, there is some information out there about routing those connections into a particular subsystem. And there's different ways to route them, for instance, by the current user of the job. And so there's some additional information at the bottom of the screen where you can find out how to route those and provide some more work management capability for those connections. And then, of course, we've got the DDM and DRDA database connections, and then internal SQL requests. You'll see those as a QSQS RVR type job. So why are we even talking about this? We're talking about it because we want to set up real-time proactive monitoring for these inbound SQL workloads or even internal SQL workloads, because sometimes they aren't written exactly the way they should in terms of being optimized, and sometimes they start consuming too much temporary storage, too much CPU, disk I/O or faulting rates go crazy. And typically what you'll do is you'll get that phone call from the end user saying, hey, what's going on with the system? So what Fortra provides is a technology called Robot Monitor. And Robot Monitor is a proactive real-time performance and application monitoring tool for all the operating systems that run on Power. IBM, Linux, AIX, and VIOS. So we can monitor all that technology using this tool. You can see it's very visual, dashboard oriented. It's real time, but also historical. So you can go back in time if, for instance, at 2 in the morning, Alex got notified that maybe there was a lot of SQL workloads happening on the system, and CPU or disk faulting was through the roof. All right, he could go back in time and see exactly what was running at that time, because not only is this tool collecting the performance metric, it will also tell you exactly what was running at that point in time historically. It's a highly customizable tool, both in terms of what it can monitor and the visual presentation to the end user. Could be your administrator, could be your application guy, could be somebody in management, for instance. So in terms of dashboards, you can have real-time data, you can have historical data, you can present data textually or in a graph form like a vertical bar or a line graph, key performance indicators. You get to decide what sort of color coding are associated with the different thresholds. We'll show you that live here in a minute during our demo. But obviously what we're going to do is we're going to apply this technology to those QZDA, SOINIT, and SSINIT type connections and give you the drill down capabilities so you could see exactly the workloads that were causing the impact on your system. So a little bit about the architecture of Robot Monitor. The Robot Monitor software is installed on each partition on your power server that you want to monitor. And these partitions can be on separate hardware footprints, or they could all be on the same hardware footprint. We don't care. The monitor software then on each of those partitions reports up to a central partition, and then that's where all the data is kept in DB2 on IBM I. We store the data very efficiently. We store the data using variable length fields, and our collection processes have been optimized over the years using every IBM API at our disposal, so we collect the data very efficiently. The graphical interface is then used to connect to the central IBM I server. It's there where the data will be presented. And likewise, if nobody is watching the graphical interface, we're still comparing the collected data to whatever thresholds have been assigned, whether it's a CPU threshold or a disk faulting threshold or just a status threshold. Maybe a job count. Maybe you need to know how many QZDA, SOINIT, JDBC connections you have and how long they've been connected for. All right, and once they've exceeded a threshold, maybe you want to send out notification. We've got multiple ways to send out notifications. Now, in terms of IBM I metrics, this is a pretty complete list of the metrics that we collect on IBM I. We also have a rather extensive list of mimics metrics that we can collect. But just in terms of JDBC and ODBC connections, here's some suggestions. CPU, I think, is pretty obvious. All right, so we can create a custom CPU monitor around those JDBC connections and set specific thresholds for the data that's collected. And by the way, when we say real-time data collection, we're collecting this data typically every 30 seconds. So CPU usage, disk I/O, faults per second, maybe job count, queue temp size. There's another one here, max job runtime. That keeps track of how long the jobs are actually active. And then temporary storage. All are valid metrics that you might want to configure for monitoring over those QZDA, SOINIT, and SSINIT connections. Now we'll show you this during the live demo, but in the graphical interface, you would select the type of monitor that you wanted to create, and then you've got multiple parameters for choosing the job that you want to monitor, or job or jobs. You can use a wildcard. In this case, we're specifically saying, let's look at Q user work subsystem and the QZDA SOINIT jobs that are running there. You could also say just QZDA asterisk, and it would monitor all those jobs that are running in Q user work that start with QZDA. And in this case, this is a CPU usage monitor. So we'll be adding up the total amount of CPU used by those jobs. Likewise, for the monitor or the data definition that you create, you can create a specific set of thresholds that will compare the total amount of CPU used by those workloads. In this case, we've set a 50% threshold. And when that happens, we're going to send a message to an IBM message queue that can then be picked up by a message monitoring tool and sent out something like this. All right, your JDBC CPU threshold is high at 51%, 186%, 80%, and so forth. And ultimately, you might send out the notification via robot alert to a mobile device, a text message, and so forth. All right, so we're adding up the total amount of CPU utilization with those QZDA, SONIT, JDBC, and ODBC jobs. We also give you the drill down capability. So within the graph, within the GUI, where you can see we've got 182% CPU utilization just for these connections, with a simple right click, I can see exactly what jobs constitute that workload, and I can drill down into any one of those jobs all the way down to the IP address and the SQL statement. And I can even take action. I can change the job, I can put the job on hold, or I could release it. Alex.
And that's really great. I was with a customer today and they were having a problem with this SQL job and they didn't know what was the SQL sentence that was running. So we tried to do some SQLs on the DB2 services, but it turns out that they were outdated, so they couldn't see what was causing the problem, and they ended up killing that job. So if they had this, they could have known what was causing the problem.
So having the visibility into the actual SQL payload could really save the day.
Yep.
All right. So let's go in to a live demo of how we would go about trapping this information. All right. So what you've got in front of you now is what we call the dashboard slideshow. So Robot Monitor is active, and you'll see multiple dashboards showing. Some of them showing, here's what's been going on the last few hours, last few minutes. You can see, oh, looks like we have an issue going on here with one of our VIO servers. That could be important. All right. Here's storage across multiple partitions. Here's real-time versus historical storage. So every 10 seconds, we're navigating through the dashboards that I've picked. This is my production dashboard. It shows me for 3 partitions, your CPU utilization, auxiliary storage, temp storage, thresholds, and so forth. And then it just cycles through and continues to cycle through those various dashboards. And you can create as many dashboards as you want. All right, so what you've got in front of you now, this is a single system view. This is my Academy system. All right, it's one of my primary IBM I partitions, and I've got quite a few metrics defined, but right at the beginning here, you can see I've got CPU total amount, I've got JDBC and ODBC connections. All right, so I'm starting to inch up a little bit. I've got 53% of my CPU being used overall, 44% of that being used by JDBC and ODBC connections. And I've identified my JDBC and ODBC connections here in terms of CPU utilization by simply creating a CPU usage monitor and saying, I want to look at all my QZDASOINIT jobs on all my systems. All the systems have Robot Monitor installed. And you can see I'm up to 107% now. So literally, I can drill down just on this metric and I can see what the workload consists of. Here's all my JDBC connections, and here's the one that's hammering the system. All right, so I'm going to drill down on that. I'm going to work with that job. So this is basically, initially when you see it, it will look like the standard display job information. Job run attributes, library list, call stack, open files. But here's the magic. here's the SQL information. All right, so this workload or this payload is coming in from a run SQL script command on my desktop, running a nasty SQL script. And here's the actual SQL and the IP address where it's coming from. And of course, I could take action. All right, I can get to the job log. All right, and I'm recording this information over time as well. So for instance, we're still at 107% here. I'm going to double click on this metric. And right here it says it's downloading data from my Academy system down into the graphical interface. All right, you can see it was almost zero for the last 9 hours until just now. All right, so I could literally drill down on my peak here, and it says here's what was running at that time. All right, and I could work with that job. I can also look at what's called history summary. So here's my average JDBC CPU utilization by month for the past 12 months. And I can drill down into any one of these months and I can look at the more detailed data. So now what it's doing is it's downloading the daily information for the month of November. And we'll be able to see what our averages look like. You can see our numbers are pretty small. But looks like on this Wednesday in the past, looks like we had a little peak here around the 4 o'clock hour on November 8th. We had this peak, and I could literally drill down into that single hour, and I could see, oh, look at that. We had a peak right here, and I could drill down into that, and I could find out exactly, well, look at that. It was the same SQL issue going on at that time. That is a little bit on proactive monitoring. Now we're going to switch gears a little bit because we're going to talk about the second face of SQL, so to speak, how you can leverage DB2 SQL services to help your operations be more efficient. Alex. All right, there we go.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we are going to talk about the DB2 for I services, what they are, how can you get them, and how can you run them? What can you do with them? So basically, these services are started showing up on 7.1 with just a couple of them, and they are meant by IBM to be a strategic method to get the information from the IBM I. So it makes the IBM I look more normal, and it helps you fill the gap with the IBM I administration knowledge. So you can access basically all the information of the system just using SQL. And actually, you can also do stuff. You can get things done using SQL. They are tables containing information, but not only tables. You also have table functions. You have views. You have procedures, and they have been enhanced a lot since, as you can imagine, from 7.1 to 7.2, and now through all the TRs and the different group PTFs to what we have now. So on that link that you have there, you can see all the services, and you can see how can you find them, how can you get them. You have the PTF on which they came from, or the group level on which they came from for each of the releases. So if you're needing a particular table or a particular function that you don't have, chances are that you will go to that page and you will know what you need to install in your system to get that table. So, and you can also find them on ACS, on the Run SQL scripts, and those are filled with examples for all of the tables. So what you can do with them, and you can also you will want to stay current with ACS, because with each new release you get newer examples. So we are talking about how you can run them. You can run them for the run SQL scripts from ACS. You can, as you see here, you can insert the examples and you can run them. You can modify whatever you want and run them. You can run them on the interactive Star SQL, or you can run them on Robot Monitor, as Chuck just showed you. That's a great way to run them, and we're going to see the difference when you run it on ACS and when you run it on Robot Monitor. So if we take a look, for instance, we can get an example, and you can enter, you can customize it, you can enter the ASP number in that case, and you can get the total capacity. But that's one of the one among the lots of things that you can do with these services. This is, for instance, another example that we get to see the heap size from the Java machines. And you can see that if you run it from SCS, you get just a number of megabytes, and it's a static number. Now, if you enter that same SQL command on Route Monitor, you will not only get the number, the current number to monitor it, but you can also get the history. So you actually get to know how that heap size evolved over time. So this is really important for you to understand the performance of your system, to understand where can be your pain points, or on which what can be the causes of your problems. So this is a great tool to work along with the IBM the DB2 for IBM services.
Yeah, and likewise, you're able to compare those numbers that you're collecting, for instance,
Yep,
heap size, to a threshold.
that's right.
Yeah, so let's take a look at a couple examples. We'll just stay on this system called Academy, and we'll dive into some SQL services examples. And let me also bring up my Run SQL Scripts option first. All right, and let's bring up another screen. All right, so under the Edit is the Examples option, Insert from Examples. And what IBM has done is they've created groups of SQL services options, for instance, communication related, application related, SQL services, Power HA, IFS, like what are the 10 largest files under a particular subdirectory. Here's Java Health, JVM Health. All right. There's some message handling queries. All right. PTF related queries. All right. And you can see here what table we're looking at. All right. And I love these. There's a whole bunch of security related SQL services as well. So what you could do is when you find something that really trips your trigger, so to speak, like reviewing all object authority or all object users, you can modify it to your needs. And I actually created a custom group, and I've modified some of these. We've created some of our own, and I can always get to those custom queries whenever I need to use them. For instance, we've got our port exhaustion example. All right, let's look at that. So what we're doing is we're looking at this netstat table, netstat info table, and specifically we're looking at port 5000 and above and connection type IP version 4, because it turns out there's a maximum number of connections that you can have with port connections in IP version 4. So I've got my example here, and I'm going to insert that. All right, so there's my query now, and I can run that, and it says, okay, I currently have 160 connections. All right, and that's currently right up to the minute. And in my robot monitor example, it says, based on my last collection, I had 197. Of course, it's varying by minute to minute. And in my case, I've got this, what's called a user-defined data collection data definition, where I have the same exact SQL statement embedded. I'm telling this to run every 30 seconds. That's right here, every 30 seconds. And I'm even comparing it to thresholds. So I've only got 168 connections, no problem. Once I hit 65,535, then I know I've reached my limit. Let's look at another example. I'll bring my run SQL script back up, create a new window, edit examples, insert from examples, and we've got our certificate expiration. This is a good one. This is an SQL that Alex put together to look at the SSL certificate on the system and to tell us how many days are left on that particular certificate. I'm going to run that. It says there's 51 days left. Okay. Here's the same exact SQL statement in the Robot Monitor dashboard. Once again, in my user data collection, I've got the SQL, same exact SQL that I had in the run SQL script. And as long as the SQL statement can return a single integer, decimal, percentage, or piece of text, you can embed that into Robot Monitor. We'll do the data collection. We'll present the data in the graphical interface. We'll compare it to thresholds, and we'll send out notification if we exceed any particular threshold that you have defined on that data collection. Proactive monitoring using SQL. So ultimately, that is the two faces of SQL, how SQL can affect your system. And of course, you do need to be monitoring the effects of external and internal SQL requests on your system. But likewise, you could leverage those SQL services to better administrate your system. All right, we've got a question for you. And you can just chat your response in. First of all, would you be interested in seeing a robot monitor demo? If you have IBM I, that's a requirement, but also you might have other operating systems running on Power, AIX, Linux, and certainly BIOS being one of the critical operating systems running on Power. Robot Monitor can monitor all those operating systems and provide valuable feedback and notification if something goes awry. Also, we have our PowerTech antivirus. We can do a demo or do a checkup if you already own that product for scanning the integrated file system for viruses or malware. Robot HA. So we do have a high availability data replication tool, journal-based, in the Robot product line. We can also do a free security scan for your IBM I. We also do something in the PowerTech product line around encryption. We can actually encrypt field level data in your DB2 database and encrypt IFS directories. All right, so we'll give you a minute to chat back to us any particular follow-up that you would like us to do there. Otherwise, just to summarize, of course, SQL has two faces. It can hurt your system. It can really help what you're doing with your system. Wondering if you have any SQL stories to share. Go ahead and chat those in. And Alex, questions. Let's take some questions from our chat.
Sure.
One of the questions that we've got is, can reports be generated for SQL data collected by Robot Monitor? And that's a good question because we did not talk about that. I'll take that. Okay. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. So we can generate a report or multiple reports over the data we collect. Those are graphical reports. They're generated right out of the graphical interface, and they'll be placed in a local directory or a shared directory, and those can be automated through a Windows command. All right.
And it's a great solution. I had a customer that did CSV reports on a job that they were interested that was running at all times, and they got a summary of the status of the job on 15 seconds intervals. So that was great for them.
Awesome. What else do we have in the Q&A?
Is there a way to share the customized examples on ACS? Okay. Yes, you can have basically a new example directory in ACS. You can create it maybe on a Windows share for your team, so your team can work. They can all work on the same examples. They can share them. They can update them. So that's a good way to collaborate with the examples.
So the scripts are just kept in a Windows directory.
That's right.
Or
yes.
a shared directory someplace.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's a SQL. It ends with SQL, the file.
Okay.
So, yep.
Okay, one more question, and let's do this one. If an SQL QZDASOINIT job is hammering your system, can monitor take action or just notify? It can take action. So there is one action we can apply over a job hammering the system, and it doesn't necessarily have to be just an SQL job. It could be any job on the system. We can change the run priority of the job. So over time, if it comes in as a 20, we can up it all the way to a run priority of 99. Likewise, we can even put the job on hold if it's hammering the system. All right, and that's automatic. Otherwise, manually, you can always put a job on hold or change it. All you have to do is drill into the graphical interface and make those changes. In terms of solutions for IBM from Fortra, we have multiple categories of solutions. And within those categories, there are multiple modules available. So whether it be solutions that help you with system administration, such as scheduling, backup, high availability, monitoring, capacity planning, BI, and so forth, and even document management, we can provide you a holistic set of tools for IBM. So if you're still doing things manually on IBM, you might want to consider taking a look at what Fortra has to offer for solutions for IBM. So with that, we're going to say thank you for your time today. Thanks for attending. If you do have any follow-up questions, please feel free to send those to info@fortra.com. And Alex, I appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Chuck. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.